2022 work session to order. We will start out with item 2.1.
Authorize commencement of the Memorial Causeway Bridge lighting project. Approve the transfer of $2.5 million in general fund reserves. And authorize a community aesthetic future agreement between the city and FDOT.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, managers, city staff, and citizens. I am Christopher Hubbard, Cultural Affairs Coordinator for the city. I am before you this morning with the Clearwater Memorial Causeway Bridge lighting project. Now, following council discussion in December 2019, staff contracted with consultants H.W. Lochner to design and engineer aesthetic lighting for the Memorial Causeway Bridge. This lighting is designed to complement and enhance the unique architecture of the bridge, and it has display colors, timing, and duration that will be able to be controlled by city staff from the amphitheater remotely. In February 18, 2021, the council elected to postpone authorization of the commencement of this project as costs with the Magic Clearwater had not yet been finalized. Support was expressed to construct the underground mechanics and conduit infrastructure necessary to implement the lighting at a future date. So that conduit and necessary infrastructure was laid beneath and will be added to hook up the amphitheater to the control boxes with the bridge. Now, additionally, adoption of Resolution 22-10 will authorize the execution of a community aesthetic feature agreement between the city and the Florida Department of Transportation. This is the final stage of the permitting process, and any aesthetic features, whether it's a mural to decorate lighting, are now governed by the community aesthetic feature process. So this will be a standard process. We are to the point where we need to simply adopt a resolution that will allow us to proceed to finalize the paperwork with the FDOT and be able to authorize commencement of the project with them. Now, a total of $1,656 has been spent and encumbered to date with the Magic Clearwater project funding for the design and consultation of H.W. Lochner. DOT has requested that $84,488.48 is included into the budget in case of a need to remove the lighting in case of failure or structural danger. And so, with a engineer's estimate and contingency, the total request is $2,500,000 from general fund reserves to complete the Memorial Causeway Bridge lighting. Now, granted, this is an estimate. It has been included to allow for any fluctuations in design and management costs, as well as to attempt to predict some potential fluctuation in the market as far as materials costs. The idea is that staff does not want to have to come back to council again to request for more. We would rather make sure that those potential fluctuations would be included within that initial ask. Now, that any kind of budget estimates are exactly that at this point. They're just estimates based on our best knowledge available to us. With an approved budget allocation, staff will be able to coordinate with Skanska to advertise the project for construction bids and generate a guaranteed maximum price. At that point, that will give us the defined amount for this project. But staff has really looked at the project budget and has, in their best knowledge, estimated that the $2.5 million will cover those costs within that budget. If you have any questions, I will answer them to the best of my ability.
Mr. Hubbard, I would imagine everybody's a little bit taken aback by the delta of what we looked at last time versus the price this time. I certainly was when I first looked at the agenda item. It was a significant price before. We were at a different time with COVID being so uncertain. can you explain a little further for the public what the delta really encompasses? I know you don't wanna come back, and I know the next step would be just going out for bids. The prices may be significantly better. We're not obligated until we get that GMP, correct?
Right.
So, do you wanna enlighten
Sure.
everybody about?
Well, given the fluctuations in the market related to construction values and the commodities and materials, and due to a post-COVID world, or in which materials and distribution are very much different now than when we started this process in 2019. Now, we did receive some estimates in 2020 and 2021, and those increased by 30%. That was provided to us by our consultants at Lochner, based on the information available to them at that time. Now, from 2021 to 2022, the increase is much more modest at approximately 4%. So things are, at that point in time, beginning to level off a bit and be able to be predicted with a little bit more certainty rather than saying a more broad increase. Some of the materials like concrete, steel, some of the infrastructure materials are in high demand that would be necessary for this project, as well as being able to put it into the request to make sure we are in line for the lighting hardware that's necessary to this project.
Other questions? Councilmember Albrecht?
You know, I was very much for this project back in 2019. I thought it was a great idea to light our bridge. It's a beautiful bridge, somewhat like the Skyway lighting. And but I too, you know, I think all of us had concerns with the jump in the price. I mean, we were talking 1.4 maybe before, and now it seems to me it's almost double. So I have a concern on that, but we've gotten some emails, like all of us, you know, from some people saying it's an ill-advised project. I don't think it is. But I just want to understand, you're telling us that you're putting together you want us to vote on basically $2,500,000 as an overall estimate, and then we should be coming in lower than that.
Yes, sir.
I understand as the retired GC about prices, because I've helping my son with a project now that's doubled in the last year and a half. So I understand that part of it. One other question I had, I went through the documents. It seems like it's mostly boilerplate, but the one part here that I saw that I wanted to bring out that says the Department reserves the right to cause the agency to relocate or remove the project in the department's sole discretion at the agency's sole cost. So I kind of understand that being in there, but has the DOT ever used that part of the, you know, if we're spending $22,500,000, I want to make sure that it's not something that they just, you know, would have us remove it at some point.
Certainly. Now, we did ask about that inclusion within the agreement, as it does provide them with a great deal of control over the project. Now, I do not know of, nor have I heard of any project that has been removed within that clause. The $84,488.40, that's what's included in the 2.5 million figure. Those are the removal costs should something need to be removed. However, the DOT has included that language in the instance of some larger infrastructure safety need. If for whatever reason the addition to the causeway becomes unstable and presents a public risk, that addition would need to be removed to ensure public safety. That's why they include that. That's why they include the flexibility at their discretion to be able to
too was taken aback in some ways about the increase, and in other ways it's not. Everything else is cost more money. However, I want to focus on the aesthetics because I'm afraid of what it could have been. I am pleased with the aesthetics. I have visited many cities where the lighting of a bridge added to the value of the city, and I can see how this lighting project can connect the beach with the rest of the city. I've also seen other projects that have gone wrong. Great example is the Jacques Cartier Bridge in Montreal. It's no longer called the Jacques Cartier, it's called the Visco Bridge. So I thought that for a second that would be an option, but I'm very pleased with the aesthetics of the vision of what it's going to look like. I think it would be a great addition. I still have to come to terms with this.
Councilmember Beckman.
I was just gonna add that I think when we're looking at, I, again, was taken back by the price, but when we're looking at 2.5 million, of discretionary spending from general funds, I think we need to look at it holistically, and I need to have a better perspective of what are the asks for general fund money, and not just look at, one agenda item related to, bridge lighting and art. So I think especially when we're this close to the budget discussions, then this needs to be included with a whole list of what do residents want, what are our, projects that we have going on that we may need to pull from, general funds, and then put the bridge lighting in that list as we consider everything, rather than just an isolation.
Councilmember Bonner.
Hey, the sticker shock is enormous. And there are so many things that, folks who've written into us are rightly pointing out we should be taking care of. I don't think we can't do both. When I drive into Largo on Missouri, especially during the Christmas season, and see the lights there, that gives me a feeling about Largo that I don't get if I enter the city any other way. And the fact that this would be tying in the beach to Magic Clearwater and the new Bluff properties, I think it can enhance tourism that way to draw people over to this side. So in that regards, I think of it as a positive. So we just have to figure out the right issue.
Mr. Hubbard.
If I may, just provide some supplemental information with regards to some of the larger lit bridges in the area, to just provide you with, granted, these are all pre-COVID amounts, but the Jacksonville Acosta Bridge, that was updated in 2018 for $2.6 million. The Sunshine Skyway that we're familiar with was a $15 million project, and the Tampa bridges, which are at just above water level, it does not require all the intensive infrastructure necessary to hang the lighting, were $1.5 million. And so, this budget, although it does have a high ticket to it, is comparable with some of the well-known bridges that we do have in our area. With regard to a insurance on the coloration of the bridge, staff will be able to change those colors at the direction of council or the city manager. There is a process if the public wishes to request lighting. There is a process being created that would govern that as well, that would tie any requests to the need to file a proclamation request from the council, so that there is a level of review to any of those requests for lighting changes, and that it does go through a standardized process rather than just receiving an email and saying, please light it up for X cause or X awareness.
Yeah, that's one of my concerns that I was going to finish up with, is I think we need a policy definitely want a policy. I can't support this item the way it's written. I think we ought to go out for bids, find out what the guaranteed maximum price is, and then we can make a decision. But we're basically with this item giving carte blanche up to $2.5 million. And that's not the way we normally proceed with a item. So on Thursday, I'll be voting against this. Councilmember Bennett.
Can I add to, as far as you're talking about, we'll need a policy and things like that, and there's a process for residents or others to request specific lighting for the bridge. I'd like to better understand how many hours a day do we think it would be lit? Would it be lit every day, just, regular white lighting, and then colored lighting is for special occasions? And then what is the cost? Because if I think of the summer, if the sun is setting at, as late as 9 or, I don't know, a little after 9 sometimes, is it lit all night, like from 10 till 5 in the morning? Or is it only, until midnight each night? And what are those operating costs? So I think those things are that's relevant information into making the decision.
I do have those.
Oh, okay, great.
This was at 100% output.
What does that mean?
That's like the lights are turned to maximum, as far as intensity and brightness.
Okay.
At 100%, and these are scenarios where every light is lit to its maximum. At assuming 8 hours per night, the total monthly cost is $523.22. The total yearly energy cost would be $6,278.68. That's at the maximum for 8 hours.
So $6,000 a year.
Any other questions at this time? 2.2. Thank you, Mr. Hubbard.
Thank you.
Provide direction on a potential sale, lease of the former City Hall and Harborview sites and a referendum on November 8, 2022.
Good morning, Andy Thompson, CRA Director. So, as the title indicates, we're looking for today for some direction on whether or not to try to move towards a referendum in November. Although staff has been having conversations with the city manager and city attorney for quite a while with the election, and it didn't seem prudent to try to move forward with something that then votes could change or interests could change. So, with that, I'm here today to help facilitate a conversation really around 2 parts: a referendum, yes or no, and then we want a developer selected prior to that referendum occurring, which I will preface and say that would be a very tight timeline if that was the path that you wanted to go down. So just quickly, I would like to review what happened last year, just to catch us all up. We did issue a request for proposals, and council did approve the requirements in that RFP. There were minimum, it was 3 sites: Pierce Street, former City Hall, former Harborview site, minimum criteria of including 150 rental units across the property, active ground floors, so there would be some kind of uses in the ground floors, meeting the downtown design guidelines, so buildings pulled up to the street, like articulation and facades. They had to provide a financial offer in the form of a ground lease or a fee simple purchase, and then finally LEED Silver certification. So we received 4 proposals, only 2 of those met that minimum threshold and were forwarded to the next level to talk about financial offer, and then only 1 was selected to continue negotiations. And then there were multiple reasons, but the primary reason negotiations fell apart was disagreements over parking and over the form that the buildings would take. The primary concerns that we heard from all of the developers through the request for information process and then the RFP process was, 1, who's going to operate the amphitheater, what's the activity of the amphitheater, and how do we know how to organize around that. 2, concerns about parking. There may be a plan for parking, but we don't see any actual parking structures. We don't know how many people will be coming down to the park on a regular basis. How And then finally, what were relationships like with Church of Scientology, right? If something happened on this Pier Street site, what would be the impact of the relationships between the city and the church? So, where are we now? The two sites, as you know, City Hall and Harbor View, probably have more restrictions than any site in the state of Florida, just gonna hazard a guess, unless they have to go through environmental review, at the federal government level, since you require a referendum for them to be sold or at least bringing on municipal purpose. So with that, in order to redevelop this site, you have the referendum questions, the city would have to declare it surplus, and then the city would have to go through one of two processes basically to select someone to purchase the property. So I'll leave you, any questions so far? Okay, so, I will turn that back to you and just to hear your thoughts about considering going forward with the referendum in November, what your thoughts are about that.
Thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and start on this. I think we have several choices. We could either go in November. November obviously will have reasonable turnout because you're going to have federal, state, and county races that are gonna occur. The second choice is we can wait till 2024 and do it during the city election. That is a significantly long period of time. Imagine will be open by then, so people will see what the final product is. And I think we made the right decision after the previous RFP in waiting, because I don't think the product that we were given was what we ultimately wanted. And I think there are times when you certainly want to move forward, but there are others that you need to show a level of patience. The third option is that we do a special referendum at our choosing. The issue with those are always that, turnout is generally not very good. You're gonna get a very niche group of people that want to vote on it, and the rest of the folks just aren't gonna take the time. Also, with the 2024 referendum, which I don't think is necessarily healthy, it could become the center of the entire election. And I really don't think that's what it should be. I think that occurred to an extent in 2020. I understand that this is a very limited time frame, but I do think it would be good to go this November, personally. I think we need to follow up on the catalytic impact of Imagine Clearwater. We have invested $84 million. I think people are now assured that it is going to happen. They know exactly what the product is going to look like. And now it's really finding the best partner for what we want to see there. And, some of the criteria that are important to me is we want something that is good for the city of Clearwater. We want something that is economically beneficial to the downtown, as the downtown becomes more and more self-sufficient. And at the same time, it still needs to be market driven. It's got to be something that the market is going to receive and use, whether that's condominiums or apartments, mixed use. We certainly want something that activates the ground level, in my opinion, not only for whoever is living there, but also for all of the residents of the city of Clearwater. And I think the other component that's important is that we need to address some of our parking, not only for the inhabitants, but also for Imagine Clearwater, because of obviously the proximity of these two projects, or three, to Imagine Clearwater itself. So if you don't take a bite of that apple to solve some of your parking, I think you're missing an opportunity.
once we have a developer for these, or developers for these properties, that it's really two questions on the referendum. And we had talked a little bit about splitting it up and having a question in November, really about changing the charter a little bit. Can you explain that?
Sure, I mean, there's a lot of permutations. What I would suggest is as follows. Once council makes the decision over whether you'd like to make a specific proposal to voters, meaning a specific developer, a specific project, versus a more general question to voters, that guides everything else. And at least talking with each of you, what I've kind of heard is that I think that there's probably broad agreement that the more specifics we can put out there, the better. And so if that's in fact the case, then the question is, how do we accomplish that legally? We all know a referendum has to be done. However, our city charter normally requires that when we sell city property, we have to sell to the highest bidder who meets the terms established by council. For example, with the North Beach Garage, that's exactly what we just done. But when it comes to the old city hall site and the other bluff properties, that process may not be as attractive because council may want to have a lot more input over who that buyer is going to be as well as what their project is going to be. So, since our charter normally would require us to sell to a high bidder that meets the terms established by council, that means that if council wants to choose the developer and choose the project, then the question that will be posed to voters in November will be a question over whether we should amend our city charter itself to allow for that type of selection. So, Vice Mayor Rebecca's point, when we go out for a question in November, one way to do this is to split the question. We could do it as one question in November, which would address all of this. I'm very confident that I could draft a single question that would deal with all of this. Or if council would like to split it, the way to do that would be asking the first question in November, meaning, shall the city charter be amended to allow council to select a developer in the future who would meet the terms established by council for this property, instead of going out for competitive auction. And that would be a yes or no question given to voters. If voters say yes on that question in November, then council would proceed in next year going through that process, selecting the developer. But the split in
through special elections, I'll just tell you, they're very difficult because you can get just specific groups that are energized versus the overall electorate of the city. And I would recommend against it personally. Having been through 6 referendums, some of them successful, some of them before I was on the council, and then some of them that were not. I think you want to have a draw that brings people out to the polls. Do you have other questions? Councilmember Shea.
I just can't imagine pushing this forward to 2024, to be honest with you. I mean, there's such a thing as fatigue. This has been going on for so long. People who are engaged know about it. People who are not engaged don't want to know about it. I can't even go back to how long I've known about Atlantic Clearwater. And I have been contacted by several people that say, you know, it's time to just, to do it. So one thing I am very certain of, I do not want to push it to 2024. I don't want this park to be built and very vibrant and then impose a huge project that can negatively impact the future. So I think it's time that we hold our voters accountable. If they're interested, they will be engaged, and we can do what we can on our end to educate them. I'm willing to go to as many meetings and go out to every community if I have to, but we must forge ahead. And waiting another 2 years just for the referendum at this point, I think is just progressive.
Councilmember Albrecht.
You know, I agree, but then seeing so many referendums fail, I know that, as David said, you need to go to the voters and you gotta have a description of what you're doing. You can't just be very generalized about it. Our voters wanna know what's going on. And, I agree, I think we need to go out. Magic Clearwater's going vertical right now. Everybody's confident that it's gonna be completed. It's a beautiful project. Developers know about it. And the public pretty much knows about it now.
last year we said we wanted to give it some more breathing room and give it some time. Now we're kind of, you know, up against the wall with this decision. It seems like a huge hurdle, but if there's confidence that there are people interested in the Bluff properties, can we start this process, and then if we don't find anybody, then we say, okay, let's not, we're gonna have a question on the referendum this year.
That's exactly what we could do.
Yeah.
We could either pump the brakes or not follow through on this November if nobody qualified with a good project comes forward.
Well, I'm okay with moving forward. I would like to see progress made on this. I hope that there is widespread interest in those properties. We saw, met with one developer who had a very interesting project that we toured, and that sounded very promising. I'd like to see what others have as well.
So the first step is we need to do the noticing for the CRA, so we need to get going on that immediately.
Exactly, so we need to.
Essentially this week.
Yes,
It'll be, the first of, May 9th, I believe it is.
Would be the drop day.
Councilmember Beckman.
Could there be a possibility that there will be 4 questions on a November ballot? So there could be a question about splitting. Do we want to remove the requirement of highest bidder? Right? Then there could potentially be 3 questions on the 3 properties. Yes?
We could do it that
I
way.
mean, conceivably, we could have different developers for each property.
Yes, I mean, that is absolutely an option. I mean, as currently drafted, I believe it's presented as a competitive solicitation for the properties together. But there is a compelling argument that can be made that these are very different properties, and perhaps they should be separate from each other. So if in fact the direction of the council is to separate them out and solicit individually, then we would in fact do individual one-by-one questions on the ballot in November. But if council does not do it that way and goes forward with more of a collective development plan, then I would draft this single question.
When we sent out that RFP or Q or whatever it is, on Bluff properties, I thought the language said a developer can come back with a proposal for 1, 2, or 3, right? Okay, and so if we do have 2 developers or 3 developers, wouldn't it make sense that we would owe it to our voters to allow them to vote on each one? I mean, is that our decision to make? Whether it's a package, it's one or all, or, okay.
There are also economics in there.
Of scale for the developers?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So, I mean, if you're moving forward and you have 1 versus 2 or 3 projects, there's economies of scale. I also think coordinating what you have in the different parcels is important, so they're complementary. We won't know what we have until we take the first step, and the first step is this notice. Councilmember Shea.
Just so for confusion, the referendum is only pertaining to the 2 properties, not, right? It's only applicable for,
That's a decision.
The referendum could be for any one or any combination or all of the properties.
And I do have a series of questions for you all to get direction on exactly those kind of issues.
Fire away.
Okay, so one is, will it be 2 properties or 3 properties? We're on, this is under active negotiations for Clear Street, so what we're currently drafting only is the former City Hall site and the former Harbor View site.
So do we need to do this Thursday, because unless we have consensus, we're gonna be voting.
I mean, if you're gonna take a formal vote, it would have to be on Thursday, if CRA is just looking for just general conversation.
Let's make these decisions Thursday. I'd like you to distribute the questions that you have to everybody so that they can ponder.
Mr. Jennings has said, you know, we've got a lot of interest in Clearwater. Is it different in the last few months than it has been in the last year that, you know, our notice to bid has been out there?
Well, there's a difference in, you know, because the development cycle is so long, right? We're having more interest from developers in general who are looking for land because this is the time when they start doing acquisition, getting plans in place, waiting for construction costs to come down, and then they can start building something. So there's that, obviously the funding, right? Having that question answered, will the park be under construction? It is. So that's generating more interest and then just in general people wanting to develop in Florida. I mean, that's the three macro trends that I'm seeing along with our local changes of a new city manager and Department of Construction.
Well, I think there's been a lot of developers who have come to Tampa and St. Petersburg. The number of sites in those locations is starting to dwindle. And they have wandered up to Clearwater and are aware of the fact that these sites are available and see it as an opportunity. I mean, they are unique. They sit on a bluff. They have stunning views. Imagine Clearwater is an incredible public investment on our part. So I think all of those things together are starting to garner new interest that we haven't had.
I would say though, if part of the beginning of the discussion was some of the developers have been a little leery because they're worried about parking and or who operates the amphitheater. So what's the timeline for us making decisions? Are we under a crunch now to make those decisions about some parking and amphitheater operation? As well as, Mr. Margolis, what's the cutoff date to get our language to the SOE for November? What's that due date?
Well, to take the second question first, 90 days is the minimum that they have advised that they need. I'm sure they would appreciate more, but 90 days is the absolute rock bottom minimum that the SOE needs. So the timeline that I've put together in my head and shared with the city manager and the scenario director is that this could potentially have the 30-day solicitation period closed the first week in June, and it would be a very tight timetable because this will come before council for a work session in June, which would be the June 13th work session. Potentially on June 13th, if all goes well, council will have multiple developers to choose from. Hopefully a consensus would emerge around something on June 13th. I would then draft a referendum question. It would be previously noticed for June 16th, which would be first reading, and then second reading would be in July. We would advertise, of course, as part of state law. It would come up very, very quickly.
And for the GoVan one, which I think we weren't here, but there was a whole committee of administration that had conversations, shaping conversations with that developer. So none of that would happen for this one.
It would, because of the accelerated time frame, if we do end up going out, as Thompson said, say at the end of this week, to give an example, we have to have it posted for at least 30 days under state law. That means that time period ends first week in June, right, for the 30-day time period. The time between that first week in June, maybe it's June 3rd, June 4th, June 5th, whatever it is, the time between then and the June 13th work session will be the time that staff uses to clarify things with developers. That will be the only window provided prior to it coming before council on work session on June 13th. So extremely narrow. Is it possible? It is possible. But we are on an extremely tight time to be able to go in and put a specific developer in front of voters.
And also one thing we've been discussing is that it would be treated as a bid, a competitive bid versus a request for proposal. So in a competitive bid, you set your minimum thresholds, right, and then choose. So it's a slightly different process because then there's not a back and forth negotiation in the same way that RFP and there's not ranking and scoring. It's did you meet these minimum criteria and what's your financial offer?
Mr. Jennings.
I'm sort of back to answer your first question. City staff has been working diligently on the parking solution. As we discussed, we are in active negotiations now for a parcel plan to construct the parking
council members, City Manager Jennings, my name is Tony McGinnis, Clearwater Gas Superintendent. I'm here seeking approval in awarding bid 1122 for gas regulators to the most responsive provider, Bevtech Sales Incorporated. These regulators will be utilized for existing and new customers. This bid was a section of the bid award last year for meters and regulators. However, the selected provider was no longer able to provide us the correct regulators, so this necessitated the rebidding of these items. I will gladly address any questions that this group has.
Any questions? Councilmember
I
Dodd.
had a question about how does the $294,000 compare to what we approved in August of 2020? Have they gone up a bunch? And then we usually approve these expenditures so far in advance. So if we approve these regulators in 2020, but they weren't any good, or we couldn't get them?
So the ones that were awarded last year were not longer available by that provider. So that created a need to search for a secondary provider. So that's why we created an additional bid.
Consent? 3.2, I understand staff wants to pull. So 4.1.
Approve purchase order with Select Fence Company.
Morning, Mayor and Council, Jim Ellis, Director of Parks and Recreation. We have before you is a purchase order with Smith Fence Company of Clearwater, Florida. It's part of a co-op bid with Pinellas County that the city of Clearwater participated in. And this contract is for fencing for our parks, athletic facilities, construction fencing and for our special events. And then also, we have other developments within the city that will utilize this PO as well. So I think that's
Questions for Mr. Alliers? It's a lot of fencing.
It is.
Consent? All right, 4.2.
Approve the contract for purchase of real property located in 1 Fence in the amount not to exceed $850,000 and transfer from Blackstown Open Space and Taxes Department acquisition.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. I'm Suzanne Kramer, Real Estate Services Coordinator. This acquisition consists of a large vacant lot that's about 57,000 square feet and it abuts State Street Park. The parcel would be a strategic acquisition for the city's Parks and Rec Department because it would not only expand State Street Park, but it also provides protection for the Spring Branch Creek that runs adjacent to the property. Now, if purchased, the property would remain in its natural state and be used as a passive park with minimal improvements, so this would also eliminate the development concerns posed by the Spring Branch Neighborhood and Parks Association. The parcel appraised for $340,000. The seller agreed to a price of $340,000. Closing costs are estimated at $10,000 for a total acquisition cost of $350,000. Funds are available in the Special Development Fund for this purchase. Pardon me. Staff recommends the acquisition. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Vice Mayor?
Just had a couple of, are you planning, well, first of all, this is fantastic to buy some green space, super happy about that, excited. It's kind of this odd shaped parcel, but are you planning any kind of fencing between the residential and this park?
Part $2.2 million.
Jim Allers.
We can fence anything, right, Jim?
Yeah, we could. I think it's just kind of, we traditionally don't do that with our nature parks that abut residential properties, usually just because of the land that's in there and the level of forestation is really not conducive. So we don't have any plans as of now.
That's okay, below my property. And I have one other question. I found an interesting sentence here in this explanation, and I like it, for one reason, and I'm just, it says to answer concerns of Spring Branch residents about, development in their, community. And I love that,
can answer that. You know, traditionally, when we acquire parkland, we look at two things. It needs to be contiguous and advantageous to our existing infrastructure that we have there. So this allows us to be able to do that. You know, a lot of times we get approached by people that want us to grab one parcel or two parcels in a vacant lot, and it just does not make sense for us to do that because of the way it's situated. But in this place, where we have State Street and then the county owns a section of property around there too, this really made a lot of sense for us, and that was the reason why we did it.
Thanks. In protecting that creek, right?
Exactly. That's it. I mean, whenever we have the ability to do that, we try to do it.
Thank you.
Other questions? I mean, just so people understand, the money for this is coming from impact fees.
Correct.
So developers pay impact fees. This is an opportunity for us to use them. Has this property then, are we certain that there's no environmental issues we're taking on? Was that part of the process?
It is part of the process.
Please.
Yes, sorry.
I just want to make sure we don't have cleanup because of some unforeseen issue from the past, 3 months after we acquired.
Environmental is a standard part of the process. Once you agree to the contract, I will contact the Civilian Environmental and ask them to property.
Consent?
Yes.
5.1, thank you all.
Approve the electronic surveillance support team multi-agency volunteer cooperation mutual aid agreement between the city and FDL.
Tony Dan Slaughter, Chief of Police. This is a renewal of a mutual aid agreement with FDLE. This Electronic Surveillance Support Team, or ESSP, has been in place, most recently approved by Council in June of 2019. This will be put in place through June 2025. The participation on this team provides us access to trained and trained personnel and technical resources that allow us to do certain surveillance operations when dealing with certain enumerated felonies that are established by statute. Requires a court order for you to go through this process that is in place. Definitely exposed to forcible felonies, adopted children, and stuff like that in those severe situations. There's a companion agreement the council sees usually once a year. Once the state budget is done, it kind of deals with the financial aspects of this agreement, the overtime reimbursement, and the training costs. Other than that, it's straightforward. You might have to answer any questions.
Any questions for the chief? Consent? 6.1.
Approve the request from the owner property address 1180 Starboard Way, Lakeview, the template by the facility.
Again, Mayor Council, Suzanne Kramer, Real Estate Services Coordinator. The purpose of this vacation is to provide space for a pool. There are no city utilities present within the easement. City staff have reviewed the vacation and have no objection.
Any questions? We'll talk about that on Thursday, 6.2.
Approve
foundation of an old seawall was another unknown. The excavator hit the foundation, and we didn't know it was there until that occurred. I went back to the aerials to the 1970s, and I could see that the old seawall was there, and when they redeveloped, they just took it down as far as they needed to, and then left the rest of the foundation there. So, it's been cut off about 10 feet below the surface to, that's how deep it was, which took another 2 feet of it, so there's still like a really deep foundation down there. So, that's gonna be there till they go a little higher. So this is a ratified and confirmed because the work, was completed while the contractor was on site. With the spring training timeline restrictions, the site needed to be restored as quickly as possible to be able to continue the spring break, stuff out there. And then at parking lot 32, we wanted to have as little impact to beachgoers and parking as possible, so we did that all over there. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this.
Any questions on the idea of no choice? Mr. Margot.
No question, but I just want to point out that this was not a correct process. For this, so, yes, we have no choice at this point, but this was not a correct process. So, say that, I'll individually on that.
So it will be rectified going forward. And that shows how much the beach has accreted on Clearwater Beach and
Absolutely.
Sankey. We're actually very lucky compared to the rest of Pinellas County. Consent?
Yeah.
All right, 6.4.
Approve an envelope of legal and administrative from the city and Pinellas County for the installation of wayfinding signage associated with the city's wayfinding project.
Council, Pat Corcoran, Senior Landscape Architect and Engineering Department. There are $0 being asked for today, which is something new and different for me. All the funding required for these permits, all the funding required for the sign and the design process already been covered in previous items. This just completes the Pinellas County permitting portion of the wayfinding program so that we can move forward to get fabricated and installed. The maintenance for the signs themselves falls to the city. Any damage done to right of way, any unforeseen impacts would also be the responsibility of the city to rectify. The county overall retains obligations to maintain their right of way. And for the bridge sign, if they see during their routine inspections of the bridge that our signage is affecting them or that infrastructure in some way, will be notified of that and be impacted to address it. So I'll answer your questions on that.
Any questions? Vice Mayor?
When I looked at this, so, I know we're not approving anything, but we've got $955,000. And this agenda item says for 6 signs, and then when I went back to the May 20th, I think it said 10 signs, and the May 20th whole PowerPoint about all the wayfinding signs, there were a lot more than 10. So how many signs are we getting?
That's a good question. So in total between the 2 phases, we're getting a little over 200. Phase 1, I think 150. These 6 are the 6 that require county permitting. That's the only reason they're different. They were included in that overall presentation that you saw. That's why you can see more of them. These 6 just require the special permitting process.
Other questions or comments? Consent?
Yes.
6.5.
Approve a work order to engineer of record, CHA Consulting Inc. for the Beat Plains Water Master Plan Project.
Good morning, my name is Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager. This project will develop a reclaimed water master plan that includes a review of the existing reclaimed water infrastructure, updating the reclaimed water hydraulic model, and evaluating future expansion requirements both due to demands, but also those required to meet Senate Bill 64. And just as a reminder to you and to the public, Senate Bill 64 requires wastewater treatment facilities discontinue discharging non-beneficial effluent to surface water bodies by 2032. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Questions for Mr. Brown? Vice Mayor?
That location map, that's pretty interesting. So this money is to hire a consultant to get a plan, right, for expansion. But do you have an idea when we look at those purple, reclaimed water areas, does it go out from the center, or do you have any idea? If a resident says, when am I going to get it, or when is it coming?
But that's why.
That's why we're gonna do
Well,
that?
that's why we threw this figure in there, so you gotta get a scale of stuff, where it is, what it
Yeah.
is. But it all begins from the wastewater treatment plants. So those, let's see,
The stars.
Not the stars, but the trinity shape, they're kind of like the squares,
Oh, yeah.
east WRI. So that's where it all begins at.
Okay.
And then from there it goes to where it's needed. And obviously, when you look at that, you can see a lot of blank space, but it's not all green space, though, right? And so we're really looking for where's the water, where's that water really? And that's what the consultant's gonna help us do. In terms of customers, there is a reclaimed water petition that they can submit to the city for evaluation. That's not to say that we're gonna just go and do that. We have to make sure it's economically viable and that we have infrastructure there and that it makes sense for the city.
And our purple lines, our reclaimed water only goes to incorporated, correct? We don't contract and deed things for unincorporated.
Correct.
But we do have lines down in
I don't know if we actually serve them or not. I know that we do have some potable water and some wastewater customers. I can look into that to verify. Is my
I
understanding.
can tell you we do, I know that for a fact because I was here. And if you look down in the southwest corner,
Or was it unincorporated?
it's not unincorporated, it's Bel Air.
Oh, I'm sorry, Belfast. That's
We
right.
service Bel Air and we service Willowdale Drive.
Thank you. I forgot.
Willowdale Drive paid for all of the infrastructure themselves. And then Bel Air took that in. Which leads me to one of my questions. When we first did Reclaim, it was free. And it was unlimited, and everybody wanted it. And it isn't anymore. Now there's people that aren't as thrilled about it. Some don't want it because there's a young factor in some of them. And then some of them don't want it because they don't want to pay for usage. They still have an availability fee. As we look at this master plan now, because of what the legislature has done, we have to get rid of this stuff
In one way or another.
in one way or another. And we can't inject it into the aquifer, which is something we looked at one point, right?
That is a possibility. It's not the aquifer, it's deeper, it's well deeper than that, in fact. DEP right now is approving, hand over fist applications to do that. That's not our preferred approach, but that is a possibility.
So, how are we making certain that in this master plan, we're gonna go into areas that wanna embrace it? Because some people do embrace it, others don't embrace it.
Well, I mean, our plan, it's all gonna get, thought out during this project here. But for starters, we've been working with our Parks and Recreation Department. That's sort of the low-hanging fruit that we saw initially, trying to figure out what else we could do.
The golf course.
Yeah, exactly, the city properties. And then as I mentioned, we do have a stack of petitions that we've already received. We're meeting with the consultant, and then they're gonna be looking at all the different land uses and see where the green space is, where is it most beneficial for us. And then as part of that, I would guesstimate that we're gonna be doing this, some public outreach, trying to make sure that we're hitting the right areas.
I just wanna make sure we're making somewhat certain on the front end, Mr. Jennings, that the areas that we're looking at have some level of acceptance. Otherwise, we're gonna run into problems. Now we've got the master plan, and you've got large swaths of neighborhoods that say, we don't want it.
And just, that's not our intention. Our
I
intention
understand.
is to just say, hey.
But I need to
we
ask
got
that question.
Yeah. The concern that I have, or that we have, are the neighborhoods that only get 51% of the people that want it, right? And you have 49% that don't want it. So hopefully we can avoid those types of situations.
So we're not using a 60% threshold.
Excuse me?
We're not using a 60% threshold.
No, my understanding is it's 51%.
What are we using on traffic calming right now? We're not using a 50% threshold there, are we?
No, 65. I believe.
65 is what I meant. We might want to rethink that. So, other questions or comments?
Well, I guess a comment, when it comes down to it, I know this doesn't sound pleasant, but if the fact is, we have to get rid of our reclaimed water, if everybody said, I don't want it, I don't wanna pay for it, it's like, well, too bad, put it somewhere, right?
Yeah, and there are, it's not gonna be a one, silver bullet, it's gonna make it all happen. This is part of it. There's also the legislature right now, as we speak, is developing regulations for direct or use. And so that would be pumping into a water treatment
Seven.
Yeah.
6.6.
Approve a master agreement and work order from Reed Inc. for the SCADA master plan project.
Jeremy Brown, engineering manager. This project is another master plan, but this one's for the public utilities supervisory control and automated data acquisition system, otherwise known as SCADA. The various utility systems included are potable water, wastewater, and reclaimed water facilities, such as treatment plants, booster pump stations, wastewater pump stations, well fields, and as well as the Knox County interconnects. With that, I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Questions for Mr. Brown? Sir? Sir. 6.7.
Approve supplemental one work order to be funds for on-call traffic engineering technical support services.
Good morning. My name is Omar Atala, Traffic Engineering Manager. This is for a supplement one work order to be done for on-call traffic engineering technical support services in the amount of $205,000, increasing the work order from $95,000 to $300,000. The supplement one work order will provide operational staff, data assistance on permit to use multi-modal data to meet traffic engineering workload demands until the vacant positions are filled in fair. We have one lead engineering, one engineering specialist, and one engineering analyst.
Questions? This is an enormous delta, obviously. I know we've been having problems, hiring, but also we need to focus on retaining. Any other questions? So, 7.1.
Approve a land use plan amendment to change the future land use map designation from institutional to residential urban for the property located at 609 Ridgeview Little John Trail.
Good morning, Dylan Prince, Planning and Development. This land use plan amendment involves a 0.275 acre vacant property located on the east side of Landry Little John Trail, approximately 150 south of Elder Street. The parcel is owned by the city of Clearwater and is currently vacant. However, the property was previously occupied by a single-family detached dwelling that was demolished in June of 2016. The application is being initiated by the city as a part of an agreement with Habitat for Humanity to sell several contiguous parcels, including the subject property, to develop workforce housing. The request is to change the future land use map designation of the property from institutional to residential urban. The proposed future land use designation of residential urban is compatible with the surrounding uses, which include single-family and multi-family residential, commercial, and institutional uses that exist in the vicinity of the subject property. The request to rezone the property from the institutional district to the low-medium density residential district is being processed concurrently with this case, which I will present next. Countywide plan map amendment will be required with this case if we are changing the future land use designation. Are there any questions?
Any questions? It's great. We love partnering with Habitat. 7.2.
Approve a zoning atlas amendment from the institutional district to the low medium density residential district for property located at 609 Ridgeview Little John Trail.
As previously stated, Dylan Prince Planning and Development. This is the companion case that goes along with the land use plan amendment. The request is to change the property zoning atlas designation from institutional district to the low medium density residential district. The change will allow the proposed use of residential dwelling units, which the current zoning designation does not allow as an acceptable use. In addition, it is known for the clarity of residential standards and it is in the best interest of future owners. Are there any questions?
Any questions? 7.3.
Approve the annexation of Mission Future Land Use Map designation of US 19 Neighborhood Center and initial zoning atlas designation of US 19 for two unaddressed parcels along West Highway 19 North.
Good morning, Lauren Maskey, Planning and Development. I needed more coffee this morning, apparently.
We all do.
So this voluntary annexation position involves 6.16 acres of property consisting of two parcels of undeveloped land. It's located on the east side of US Highway 19, approximately a little over 1,000 feet south of Sunset Point Road.
So the applicant is requesting annexation in order to receive sanitary sewer and solid waste service from the city of on-site development. The property is located in an enclave, and both parcels are contiguous to its existing city boundaries in at least one direction. It's proposed that the property be assigned a future land use map designation of US 19 Neighborhood Center, and it would be in the US 19 zoning district. An amendment to the countywide plan map will be required to maintain consistency. So I wanted to make sure I put up the arrow because those red arrows show that there are currently 2 existing billboards on the property, one located towards the northwest corner of the site, and the other to the southwest corner of the site. So that makes us a little bit unique compared to our typical annexations. The applicant has entered into a proposed annexation agreement pursuant to section 4-604 of the code to facilitate voluntary annexation of the property. That proposed agreement sets forth 3 key covenants related to the cooperation between all of the parties. The main provision addresses the billboards because the Community Development Code, section 3-1804C prohibits billboards, and no new billboards can be erected on the property. The proposed annexation agreement establishes acceptance of 2 existing billboards, these 2, as non-conforming structures for a specific period of time. It requires that they would be removed from the property by January 1st, 2025. Until they're removed, the billboards will be governed by the proposed annexation agreement and the city's non-conforming provisions of the code. Those only permit normal repair and maintenance of the signs. They'll prohibit any changes being made to the signs that would increase the nonconformity, such as changes in materials, increases in height or width, etc. If the signs are damaged or destroyed beyond 50% of their value, the signs cannot be repaired or rebuilt and would need to be removed. The annexation agreement also provides for the temporary relocation of the existing signs to another area of the property. In addition to those provisions addressing the billboards, the proposed annexation agreement also addresses the provision of sanitary sewer service and solid waste service to the property, and then the application of in-city rate for recreation programming. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Baldwin.
So please repeat that again, about, you said something about the billboards could be moved to another part of the property?
The agreement outlines that as a possibility. However, it's unclear if that would be feasible while still conforming with the 50% threshold. So,
This is a highly unusual annexation situation, because we do have the billboards already on site, which have been there for many years. The current property owner, Dr. Janelle, has had an agreement with the Pinellas County government for many years, resulting in litigation that he was in with them. He has a buyer lined up for this property. The buyer of the property, which is a multifamily housing apartment complex, does not really want the signs in their current position. In fact, the buyer's perspective is that the signs cannot remain in their current position because they interfere with the site plan. So the buyer actually needs the signs moved somewhere off-site. The buyer will be thrilled to have it gone all together, but at a minimum, the buyer needs them moved somewhere else. And so the delicate balance here for us is that on one hand, we have a buyer who wants the signs somewhere else. We would love the signs to be nowhere on property because it doesn't conform to our code. And the current property owner, Dr. Janelli, wants to keep the signs up as long as possible and continue monetizing them. And so this agreement reflects a compromise between all of those interests. So to answer your question, the buyer, once the buyer acquires title to the land, may in fact temporarily relocate those signs so that the buyer can begin site work, which is what they want to do as quickly as possible. But it will only be temporary relocation. At the very latest, by January 1st of 2025, there is a drop dead deadline that all signs must be removed from the property. They may very well be removed well before that, but at a very bare minimum, I wanted to ensure that there was a drop dead deadline by which those signs would be removed, and that's the plan.
a storm or damage, that's it. They get one move, like, as soon as the property
If
changes
it's more than
hands.
50%.
Oh, that, if it's more than 50%.
Yeah. Is that a typical like grandfathering move?
I'm reluctant to use the word grandfathering. Mr. Owens Jr., who represents the buyer, and represents Dr. Ginelli, for purposes of this application, also used that word, but I'm reluctant to use that word only because in the context of voluntary annexation, state law is pretty clear that if a property owner wants to annex into the city, and if they're asking permission from this council to annex into the city, then as a condition of annexation, they must be willing to comply with our city code. And if our city code is too onerous for them or too inconvenient for them, they don't have to annex into the city. So I'm reluctant to say it's grandfather because there is no statutory entitlement to grandfathering under the annexation provision, which is what we're dealing with here. This agreement, from my perspective, represents just a compromise of all interests. It would certainly be within council's discretion to say, no, we're not going to allow annexation at all until they remove the signs. And you could do that. But if you do that, it would likely scuttle the deal, and we would lose the ability to have a new commercial property in the city, which will be more multifamily housing in the city, which we also need. So that's the question from council.
Vice Mayor.
I would think grandfathering too is not allowing you to relocate it. I think grandfathering would be if they're already, they maintain their existing position, they stay there for a set time, the grandfather as is. But this is unique in that they want to pick them up and put them somewhere else, when our code specifically says we don't want them.
Correct.
Prohibit that.
That's absolutely correct. And under normal circumstances, we would never agree to something that would deviate from our code. This is a unique situation where the ability to temporarily relocate signs will allow the buyer to start the site work on housing, which we need within the city, and would allow the deal to go through. But it is ultimately a question for council. And so ultimately, if council determines that the property owner, Dr. Ginelli, and or the buyer must comply from day one as a condition of annexation, that would be a proper decision for council, and it would be council's prerogative to say, no, we're not going to allow you to annex until such time as you bring the property into compliance. I think that will settle the deal, but that is a decision for council.
Well, the cost of relocating those signs is not inexpensive.
Correct.
Moving them and erecting them again is not cheap for this time frame. It surprises me a little bit. I move forward on this one with a little bit of trepidation. I'm concerned that there could be litigation down the road. I read all the language, obviously, if we do get into litigation down the road, but I'd almost like to see any litigation if it deals with the billboards being paid for by current billboard owner.
I'm
For
pretty,
both sides,
I'm pretty confident in the language that we put in there.
so that won't occur.
I can't say it won't occur, but if it does, I'm very confident in the outlook.
Will prepare that. And then we would be reimbursed.
We would definitely seek attorney's fees in a case like this because I think the annexation agreement is crystal clear as to the obligations that are in there. And so if for some reason there is non-compliance, we actually have multiple options for enforcement. One of them would be to actually go on the property ourselves, to go ahead and remove the signs at their cost. The alternative option would be to use code enforcement proceedings. So we actually have multiple vehicles for enforcement. And based on the language of this agreement, it's pretty solid. There's not much they can do.
Have we seen a site plan at all? Is this purely residential? Is there mixed use, or in the immortal words of Queen, another one bites the dust?
We have seen preliminary site plans. They've not submitted anything at this time, but they've come in through the New Jersey meeting, and it is solely residential.
Vice Mayor.
Is there a contingency if, this development doesn't get signed, that, the property, it wouldn't be that the property is annexed in with this agreement for 2 years of extended billboard use without a developer starting to work, right?
The absolute
amendment to an agreement with the CMA regarding some slips behind the CMA property. There's 20 slips that they entered into an agreement with to provide for maintenance and upgrades for 5 years and then a second 5 years. The amendment merely allows them some more flexibility. I looked at the original agreement, and each year it specified exactly what they were supposed to do, and I think the constraints were just too much to make that effective. The monetary amount hasn't changed over the course of the first 5 years or the second 5 years, and we've also included language in there that each calendar year will have to provide us an update on what they've done. And we also have the ability, if they haven't performed, to give them a 30-day notice. We believe it's in the best interest of the city and the CMA.
Questions? Consent?
Yes.
9.1, thank you, Mr. Gannon.
Thank you.
Authorize a purchase order to Xylem Inc. for the purchase of flight pumps, replacement pumps, and factory authorized service.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Rich Gardner, Director of Public Utilities. The item before you today is the authorization of a purchase order for a sole source contract for flight pumps for the water and wastewater systems. The pumps are used to replace existing equipment in kind. Replacement of pumps with other manufacturers would require re-engineering and modification of the existing piping system. We're recommending award to Xylem in the amount of $500,000. This is a 1-year contract from June 1 to May 31st, 2023, with the option for 2 1-year renewals. I'm asking for you to authorize the purchase order and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Gardner? Consent? 10.1.
Reappoint Jerry Monroe to the Public Art and Design Board as the active professional artist representative with a term to expire April 7, 2026. Council members, Jerry Monroe is the individual who is serving and is willing to be reappointed, and is the only applicant we have on file that meets this category.
Consent? 10.2.
Reappoint Jason Hood and Parker Crabtree to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board with terms to expire May 31st, 2026. Council members, both members are able to be reappointed to the board. Mr. Hood just completed his first term, and Mr. Crabtree was serving an unexpired term, and he has no absences to report.
Mr. Hood only had one, I think.
Mr. Crabtree and Mr. Hood only had one, and Mr. Crabtree had 0.
We ought to reappoint him. Any questions or comments?
I have a comment about this one and the previous one. And it's nothing personal against the people who are serving on these boards. I've been to both of the board meetings multiple times, but I just feel like when we have citizens who are applying for a reappointment, it would be good to have a different application or reappointment for them. When we have somebody who serves for 8 years on the previous agenda item, and then these men have been on this board for 4 years. It's like, how about a little bit of a reflection of, what have you learned? What has been the progress that has been made? What have you recommended for the board? Or what do you see as wins for the board in your service? And what do you envision going forward? I mean, they've been there, they have experience more so than somebody who's just applying for the first time. And so I'd like to have a better feel for, their reflections on the board. I just think it would be good to think about having a reappointment application.
On that note, I am working on the application of the system, so we're going to be moving on to a different system. Grandview has an advisory board application template. The county
questions on these? Want to talk about them on Thursday, or?
I'm okay with
Unless
talking
there's
about it now.
clear consensus on who everybody wants. I mean, I think, we can if we have consensus. And I thought Kelly and Angela Tisdale, from their applications and everything that they put on there, that's what I support. All right, consent. Moving on. Any questions about second readings, 12.1 through 12.4? Seeing none. Any verbal reports, Mr. Jennings?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to just update the public and the council on a couple of different items. City staff has been working to follow up from the strategic planning workshop. The council did that a couple of weeks ago. We have set the timing and locations for the public meetings. Now, these meetings will not just be about strategic planning. We're also seeking the public's input on the way to use the ARPA funds as well. So it's a two-item agenda for these meetings. We have the Morningside Rec Center on May 16th, North Greenwood on May 24th, Clearwater Beach on May 31st, and Countryside Library on June 1st. Those are the four meeting locations and times, dates, and we will be getting that information out to the public very shortly. And I also wanted to mention that and give kudos to our planning department director. She came to me after I started wanting to do a business review process. And it's really a way in which she can find out whether that department is operating efficiently and effectively. And I have to commend her for that, because rarely have I seen a department director wanting to do an internal look at the way in which they do business. So that process is beginning here shortly. I met with the Matrix, which is the company that is doing the analysis. I've asked them to meet with each of you, so we can get the council's input as well. So that will be coming shortly. Also, there will be public meetings as well in terms of the business review process. It's really trying to make sure that that department, both planning side and code enforcement side, operating the way we need to be.
So back to the strategic planning ARPA discussion, how is that proposed to be broken up in the meeting? Are they going to be intermingled, or are they going to literally be?
Two different items. So strategic planning, we would imagine strategic planning going first, and then any type of questions or comments on ARPA will follow that.
Okay, so is Dr. Jackson going to be participating in that?
We hope so.
On the strategic planning portion, staff
Morning, Mayor and Council. Councilmember Benson, thank you for the opportunity to present the information on fleet. I'll turn it over to our fleet manager, Perry Thompson.
Good morning, Perry Conklin, Fleet Manager. I'd like to preface this conversation to give you an update on the issues moving forward in the fleet industry and vehicles that we're seeing. One of the words that were coming up with the manufacturers, vendors, fleet managers was VUCA. That's an acronym for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that's what we have to look forward to in the next 2 years. Pricing commodities, aluminum's gone up, stainless steel's gone up, palladium's gone up 80%. Along with the supply chain issues, which are enormous. The chip shortage is going to rear its ugly head again, coming back to us in an even stronger form than we. Russia provides 90% of the neon gas for the lasers that make the chips. Ukraine purifies 60% of that gas from Russia. And of course, everybody's scrambling to figure out how to get around that. And of course, the cost of shipping has skyrocketed. And they're using different methodology in the ports in Los Angeles and Long Beach on what they consider the backlog is for the the container ships being out there. So what they're doing is they're further out in the ocean, beyond the horizon, and their methodology doesn't count those past a certain mileage, even though they wait. That came out too in events that I took. So the current consensus on ordering vehicles is that we're 18 months out before we see them. Currently, we have 40 vehicles that we purchased last year. We ordered them in August. We gave a presentation to council maybe a month before that, and we have 40 vehicles we're still waiting. And then the speculation also is that this will go into 24 months. It's almost 2 years. The manufacturers are prioritizing the vehicles that they want to sell to the public because they can get higher margins for those vehicles versus fleets. So we're sort of in the back of the line, so to speak. And that's just to preface the conversation of that portion of it, so you're all aware of what we're facing. So as far as our replacement cycle, we've been doing this for a few years. We're right-sizing. We're doing vehicle sharing between the departments, transferring of vehicles that aren't being used in one department to another department that needs it, and we're actually removing vehicles that aren't being used, and then also downsizing in the departments that do not need them. Another conversation that's going to come up in the future will be the employee shortage and those vehicles not being used. You see that in lack of mileage and all that. And that's not a conversation right now, but we're looking at that may happen, that those need to be migrated over to other departments. The first hybrid we purchased and went into service in 2020 with the police department. Those were 6 vehicles. We've now migrated to 31 hybrids, police having most of those. 2 in parking enforcement, 2 in code compliance, and 2 in public utilities. We're also looking at doing asset lifecycle management with our new software that we've gotten, which that'll take a few years to put in place so we can project out 5 years, 10 years where we're going to be and what those costs are associated with. Of course, right now we can't do that because of all the turmoil going on within the environment. Just to show, just in the hybrid vehicles, just in miles per gallon, the Crown Vics were 8 to 11, Tahoes were 2x2s were 8 to 10, and the Tahoe 4x4s were 7. We migrated to Explorer for 6, non-hybrid, that got 11.7 miles per gallon. The hybrid Explorer is now reading 22.4 miles per gallon. One of the key things in that is also the training on how to drive those vehicles, the hybrid vehicles, because it takes a little bit difference. Because of the generation, you're letting off, you're not letting the brakes, because the generator kicks in and acts like a brake, so to speak. So yes, we are moving forward. We're going to have a slowdown. We also have
It was that we have, of the vehicles, there was 48 vehicles that fall under the Green Fleet plan. We had 24 that were fit for the hybridization, electrification, alternative fuels. And we're going to do those as hybrids, and that would be 49% of that group will be for this next budget cycle. And did you have any questions about the charging portion of it? Because we're looking at this time and this delay in purchasing of vehicles as a point where we can start concentrating on the infrastructure, and all these things I'm talking about need to be a paced approach, going by the numbers that we can generate to show what we need moving forward. In phase one, the MSP parking garage will have 2 chargers on the first floor. Those will be for city employees during the week, and on the weekends will be open to the public. And then the garden parking garage has 1 charger there that needs to be replaced, and we're going to add 1 additional new one to that. And then on the 3rd floor of MSB, there will be 2 more chargers put with the future 10 to 12 moving forward. So they'll be solar ready with the new retrofit, and then also being able to have going forward to migrating out to 10 to 12 in the future. Then of course home chargers, that's a whole other asset class that will come in the future that will be discussion there. During the meetings I've had, there's a lot of interesting things complications that can go along with that, as far as the employee usage and, employee is terminated, if they move to another house, if they're in an older home, are they in apartments, are they in condos? That's for a future discussion. That's a brief synopsis. I didn't know what questions to expect, so. Do you have any other questions?
Questions?
First of all, thank you for that presentation. You're doing such great work. It's exciting. And it's sad to hear about all those delays. It's not super surprising, but, I had no idea about things that come from Russia that have to be processed in Ukraine and all that. You can imagine. I have a couple of, one simple little question. Do we have an idling policy as a city for city vehicles? Because there was an email that came in about.
Yes. Not yet. We had looked into it in the past, and I would like to say, because we're in the 100 best fleets, we have access to many other fleets that have tried things and didn't try things. One of the things came out of certain types of idling mechanisms that have actually impinged on the warranty of the vehicle because it changed the parameters of the idle or the mixture for idling. But as far as the policy over a time period, no, we don't have that in place.
So I'm not talking about a device that you put on a vehicle. I mean,
So you're talking about time frame?
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, no, we don't.
it couldn't be out of the truck for more than 5 minutes. You have to turn it off. You can't leave it running with the air conditioning.
No, we don't have a policy.
You know, other cities do have those kind of policies?
Yes, I do.
Do you know, are they effective? Can you talk to your peers about that?
Yes, they are effective if you do it time frame wise. If you do changing mechanics of the vehicle, that would be fine.
And then you said something that there are new chargers that are coming into MSB that will be solar ready?
No. I'm just saying that the retrofit for the MSB, the retrofit that's happening will make it solar ready, and then also charging of it. It's not incumbent, but there are solar chargers out there. One company is Beam. You don't have to do anything underground, anything. It's all self-contained. Those start at $75,000 a unit, and they can charge up to 4 vehicles. New York City has 96 of them. And then I catch it from them because they say we don't have snow down here. So the solar chargers would be more effective.
I think one of the most important things to do is to really celebrate and be forward facing for all the good things you're So are you reporting on, are you keeping track of the spreadsheet of the savings, and the environmental, positives of this hybrid
We
fleet?
haven't to date, but we're capable of doing that going forward with our new asset management software. that we can do that.
Great, 'cause I think.
And there's been a slower migration than we thought. We thought we would be further ahead than we were with the software, but like any other software, there's always glitches to it that you have to work your way through, and that's what we're doing. We're working our way through certain things that we have to cover, so that our foundation of the numbers that we get will be correct on that.
And really being transparent, showing our residents how fiscally and environmentally responsible we are, right?
Yeah, and that ties all into that.
Fantastic. And then I guess the last question is, do you have any feedback on the hybrids that our workers are using? Do they like them?
Yes,
Overall?
the police did an internal survey last year, maybe a year and a half ago, and they got an 80% positivity rate with those, which you don't get that regularly.
Really? Oh, good.
So that was very good.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Are we standardizing which charging stations we're using? If so, what company is that?
We're still researching. We haven't
It's a
standardized.
very
Absolutely.
fragmented, industry.
Sheridan. Much better if I can say.
Sheridan Months, Sustainable Coordinator. So as Perry said, we are researching. We are working or wanting to work with a vendor right now just for the Garden Avenue garage. That charging station is very old, it needs to be replaced. So for that location, we're thinking it's a good trial period for that vendor to see how it's going. Moving forward, we intend to issue an RFP to really work with not only the best vendor, but also work with that vendor to prioritize areas across the city as city facilities and possible public charging opportunities to make sure we're being
So the charging stations down at Imagine and Coachman, have those been determined yet?
I'm not sure.
It seems like we need to get a handle on vendor, so that we're consistent. We also, I think we can pricing, whether we're running it or they're running it, at the Garden Street Garage, are people going to be charged going forward?
And so after the Garden Avenue installation, that's when we do intend to have this station moving forward for
Thank you. Can we piggyback off some other company? We piggyback off things all the time. And can we look at the other municipalities in the county and find out which are they using, green mods or charge point or whatever, and kind of all be on a similar page there and get, again, economies of scale and get a better price.
Yeah, so we have a few options. The sheriff's co-op issued out a bid to back off of the vendors that they selected. We also have Sourcewell, and there are a number of charging station vendors that are approved through Sourcewell that we could back onto. And then also Jeremy Bale's House has been reaching out to different parking managers in the area and also giving an assessment for what charging stations are they using and do they like them. So we've already had feedback on, for instance, and I won't name the vendor, but from a neighboring municipality that has used a vendor that has decided not to use that vendor moving forward. So we're getting good feedback.
And being in the 100 best leagues, we have, like I said before, communication within that group, and that's all over the country. And they did an internal survey a few years ago, and it was a comparator to who did what, and it goes into detail why they didn't continue doing it or why they continue doing it. And that's it's from most of it's from the bigger cities that are further ahead of us in the process, which helps us quite a bit on what to do and not to do. And within that, those things come up. And then I just wanted to add a little bit of hype here that we placed 5th in the nation in the 100 best leagues. And part of that is to do with technology, partnering with other groups. We started a CDL program with PTEC, which we closed ours down because of the new ELDT mandates, and we started that 2 years ago. And other things like that.
Well, congratulations and thank you for this presentation. Item 14.2, I wanted to bring forward, I've got emails from several residents who want to use artificial turf. We went through this back in, I think it was '06. We had a traveling nurse who put artificial turf in her front yard without getting a permit. And we had a very lengthy discussion. And we decided that we didn't think the artificial turf was appropriate for a number of reasons. One of which was when it starts to age and fade, you know, and it's a different owner, we're gonna force them to replace it or replace it with grass. I know there's good and bad from it. What the turf is made of is a lot of petrochemical products. It would have to be pervious underneath. You don't use water, obviously, on it. It's understand. And in some instances, it might work better. But I know I've found 2 places in the city that residents have already put it down. My understanding, and I asked our city manager about code enforcement, said if we have something on the books as an ordinance that's prohibited, we either need to enforce the ordinance or we need to change the ordinance. I had an older gentleman say he used to love to do yard work, but because of his age, he can no longer do it. That's one of the reasons he wanted to go to the artificial turf. The other thing is, we have in one of our parks, which I think if we're going to enforce on residents, we probably ought to follow the same ordinance regardless of where it is. And it may make sense, unless we're gonna change the ordinance so that under very special circumstances, we will use artificial. But before we went any further, I want to get everybody's feelings on this hot topic of artificial turf. Councilmember Albrecht.
Well, when I first saw this, when we did the opening in the park, I was there, and I was like, was that artificial turf? And I knew we didn't have an allowance for that. But, you know, they made a lot of headway with artificial turf lately. I looked into it, it doesn't require water, of course. My issues were, you know, is it permeable enough where the water will go through it? Yes, it is. They make it now with, you know, lead-free, and you don't worry about your pets and stuff going out on it. And I know a lot of cities have requirements for this, so I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We just look at what other
Crest Lake is adjacent to a playground, and an actual kind of area, so on a mountain, but yes, that's what we have in those two locations.
Do you know when it was installed?
Crest Lake was last year, so that was gonna be, 2021, and then the artificial turf out at Jack Russell, I would say would be 2017, 2018, somewhere like that.
To answer your question, I don't know off the top of my head.
Mr. Jennings?
I do think there is a significant difference between having residential use of artificial turf and sports complexes. Many sports facilities are going to artificial turf. There's a lot of studies that prove it has an impact on the number of injuries and all of that. So I think that we need to kind of separate those two and recognize that our sports facilities are really different than residential.
I do too, but if it's not in the ordinance, we need to correct it. Because we have it, and these other facilities have it, and they ought to be in compliance. So we either need to bring them into compliance, which I can't imagine. We're gonna make Clearwater High rip up their brand new artificial field, or we change the ordinance for specific uses. I think the discussion today is more about residential. Vice Mayor?
I had some questions and comments about, people putting artificial turf in their front yard and really wanting to understand why. I mean, if they aren't able to mow and maintain or don't want that expense, I understand that reason. I'm wondering if there's an environmental component. Is it better to have, artificial turf rather than to try to, maintain a golf course like lawn in the front of your house? I also think about, do we allow gardening in the front yard? Do we allow, more native landscaping that's easier on our environment? And, I grew up in the Midwest where we had mow on quarter-acre, properties too frequently. But my mother-in-law was out in Arizona, and she did have a stone front yard that was maintained and worked fine. So I do see some people that have stones or crushed shells, and is that environmentally better? So I don't know how all those things line up as far as what's better for the environment, regardless of aesthetics, I guess.
Chair Benji Munt, Sustainability Coordinator. So there are a few different options here. If I had 100% my way, and it was very naive, everyone would have a native ground cover. We have a few native species that are really excellent ground covers, 3 that are more popular. We don't really have to mow them, they don't need fertilizer, and once they're established, they don't need excessive watering. Now, knowing that most people still want that traditional turf grass look, there are some options, especially when you work with UF IFAS, to select a species that is suitable for Florida, that doesn't need excessive watering and doesn't need excessive fertilizing, a little bit of composting too. And sometimes it's more people that want that green, absolute green look year round. And we get into some issues of what's really necessary. It does still require mowing, so that's a maintenance concern. I will say when you look at the properties that are Robinson Shell, previously we might have seen that we recommended as a form of zero spacing, but that's no longer recommended for Florida. And that's because the amount of heat that property that can generate for the property with the sun just radiating down on shells and stones. Not to mention, it doesn't really do anything for weeds. Weeds will still pop up through it, and then the only way to handle them is to spray chemicals on them. So not really recommended. So if you were not to do a native ground cover, then we compared like traditional lawn versus an artificial turf. So there are some benefits for artificial turf that people frequently think of in terms of watering, in terms of you don't have to need to fertilize. Now, I will say if you're selecting that right species from UF IFAS for Florida properties, you can really kind of lessen the concerns of both of those as well. But when we looked at the two options, we did find that a Florida-friendly species of turf grass is better than artificial turf for a number of reasons. To summarize them, artificial turf has a manufacturing process that emits greenhouse gas emissions, like the mayor mentioned. It has the potential to increase ground temperature and further contribute to the urban heat island effects. material cannot be recycled or composted at end of life. When you look it up, you'll see different life expectancies. A lot of them are the vendors, which will give you the higher end. We see anywhere from 10 to 20 years now. It is getting better, but the aesthetic look of those is a concern as they age as well. The materials often comprise of plastic or rubber, and these materials break down over time into microplastics that then enter our waterways, and we have uncertain risks to animals, including human health effects. And then finally, the artificial lawn would provide no habitat. So while turf grass does not provide much, it still allows for a soil ecosystem to exist and for birds to forage, where with the artificial turf, between the compaction and the heating of that soil, you just don't really see that as much. So those are some of the main concerns that we recommend.
Any questions there?
So just looking, just looking for a little direction from the council. Would you like for us to, or how would you like for staff to proceed?
I was gonna ask where we want to go from here as the next step, and I don't think there's any difference. Somebody brought up front yards. There's no difference between front or backyards in our ordinance. I believe.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Well, should we look at the ordinance and just make sure we have a carve out for parks, and special use?
This is the first I've heard that we have any artificial turf at all, so I have a little time to that. Because there may be a carve out somewhere in some obscure provision, so I think that's a comment on that offline, off time.
Well, in your free time, you can have one of your attorneys start studying this. I mean, is there interest in allowing it or not? I think that's really the question. If there's no interest, then there's nothing to look at other than these, specific institutional uses.
I haven't had many conversations, maybe one, on people wanting to, it's been on my radar.
Is that a yes or a no?
Or do you want to pursue? Well, I
I'm
think
assuming you're
we
not
should.
going to want to pursue it for residential.
I can see in some cases for residential, I couldn't imagine somebody had a 2-acre lot wanting to do turf, but, I know in a lot of instances where people have, done a lot of landscaping in the front with, plants under, well, especially under oak trees. I mean, grass just doesn't grow, when it has shade all the time. I think that in some cases like that, it might be nice to have the artificial turf, maybe in small areas, but I don't wanna get down to designating a certain percentage of property for it. I think I'd rather have a discussion to see how other cities that do allow it, what problems they've had with it and how they have their codes put together, what the concerns are.
At this point, no, I haven't had any communication from anyone asking me for this to be pursued. At this point, it's not residential, so at this point.
Yes, I haven't had turf on my radar from anyone in the community, but it does seem inappropriate for us to be using it and to say that citizens can't. So we should probably sort that out.
All right, so I'm hearing consensus not to do it on a residential basis. We need to look at our ordinance. I also know people put in honey greens in their backyards. And I want to know if that's
giving a review of our city manager and city attorney every year. This was a big topic that was discussed in the charter review committee a couple of years ago. And, you know, they didn't come to a full consensus, but, you know, I think our two highest paid city administrators need to set some annual measurable goals, and that way we can, you know, we can evaluate them fairly based on something that they have agreed to, they have proposed themselves. And so I look back when I taught in the fall, we'd go back to school in August, and we would have a goal that was given to us by the superintendent, and then we would have a goal for our individual building in multiple high schools, and then I would have a department goal. So certainly the superintendent's goal and the principal's goal, we didn't weigh in on that much, but my department goal was more individual to me in the classroom and my strengths and what I wanted to improve on. And so I would sit down with my department chair and we agree on it and what the measurements were going to be. And then we have a mid-year kind of review and then a final evaluation. That went in my form, and that's how we did it in public education in Northern Illinois. And I think it works. And you know, and I think it's a collaborative thing. It's certainly not dictating things. And I was looking at, you know, there can be measurable goals related to productivity, to efficiencies, to cost reductions, resident satisfaction, some internal controls, retention, recruiting. You know, we mentioned retention today at one of our agenda items. We need to, you know, we certainly want to fill vacancies and retain good employees. Sustainability is a great one. That's easy to measure, and we're making great progress. If we're looking at our procurement procedures or processes, visibility and engagement, communications, all those kinds of things. And I'm just talking about 2 or 3 goals. And I just think it would be, I think that we owe it to our residents, because it's my understanding that every other city employee has a manager or a director that evaluates them each year. And our form of evaluation is a little more narrative and a little softer. And I'm okay with the narrative and the soft as being a component of it, but I really think we need to have but I'm silly, somebody is. But I think you know, 1 or 2 couple of measurable goals is a good way to just be real transparent and show progress. And not that you have to even meet them. I mean, hopefully we'll meet them and we set realistic goals. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world. You can report back on what were the obstacles, what were the challenges, what affected me meeting this goal, and how do I need to modify. So it's just, those are my thoughts about it. I'm going to guys think.
This is a resurrection from another council member. He took a stab at this years and years and years on this one.
I'm not aware.
Okay. Thoughts? I don't know. I have meetings with the city manager, and I know as all of you do on a weekly basis, and there's goals that we're talking about. And I don't do it annually, I do it weekly. And, you know, I always bring a list to the city manager, just like I did with Mr. Horn. And I keep all of them in a file and look back to see which ones have been accomplished and those that have not. And find out reasons why they haven't been accomplished and hear all of that feedback. There's a difference between all of the other employees that are in the city. They do get evaluated periodically. We evaluate the city attorney and city manager and their at-will employees. We can terminate them whenever we want. If we went forward with doing this process, I would tell you that we also have to have ramifications for those goals that aren't met. What happened when we didn't meet all your goals as a teacher? Just went in your file?
We talked about ways to modify it to make had those measurements, and whether they were going to college or not. And so
Right.
some of those scores, but we had goals that we wanted to increase those scores. And if we did not meet those goals, we developed and brought in AC test prep. We incentivized kids to take AC test prep. And so we did things to meet that goal because we didn't meet it in an initial, in an earlier year. So like I said, I don't think it's, necessarily a huge negative if someone doesn't reach or exceed that goal, but it's something to strive for, and it's just really being forward facing with our public about, these are some of the things I want to do, and I've done. Mr. Jennings has already done phenomenal things with, residents scream about sidewalks, rightly so, and he's already put the financial resources in there and made great strides. Those are the types, of things that I think it can be like, look, I told you, I'm gonna reduce the backlog, and look at how much I've already reduced it. It's already March, and it's already been reduced.
So do you want the goals to be determined by the entire council of the unanimous?
I would think,
I don't think there ought to be carve-outs per council member.
No, I don't
It's
think
gotta
so.
be something that there's consensus
Yeah.
that the entire council agrees upon.
Correct.
Otherwise, now you have council members giving dictates
Right.
to the manager and the attorney
Right.
on an individual basis, and I won't support
No.
that.
And I think it could run along our fiscal year, and so, let's say in August or so, we meet individually with our city manager and city attorney and talk about, hey, what do you think, your goals might be for the upcoming fiscal year, and we talk one-on-one, and I'm assuming we get the same information from them. And then during the work session, we could talk together up here, and it's like, okay, so Mr. Jennings has suggested these 3 goals, and Mr. Margolis has suggested a couple of these goals. By the way, Mr. Margolis has had measured goals before we had a conversation, but anyway. And then we talk about it here, do they seem reasonable? Are we ready to go forward with it? Okay, then this is what we are going to do, and then when we give them their annual review, the following, end of September before, October, or whenever we choose to do it. We sit down with them and they submit, like, what's your narrative on how you did with the goals? And we just go from there.
Councilmember Albright.
Okay, we've talked about this going back for years. I mean, I know even on charter reviews the past couple of times, it's always been brought up because it's always good to set goals. But we do have a review process at the end of the year, fiscal year, and I usually do mine in writing, based on what I've seen happen in the year. Now, what happened the last 2 years, that would have been hard to set goals with COVID, because a lot of things just got put aside and running. I would be okay without council sitting down and doing, but I think we ask the city
It's where we're using people and money and time. So that's, I think all of that would have to be done from a sequencing standpoint before the budgetary process we're too deep into it. Otherwise, you're gonna be allocating resources that may not be budgeted.
And maybe that's not up to us to set, I'd rather hear from the city manager, city attorney, what goals you think you can accomplish. Because, I know you're gonna be thinking about it. And then based on that, I give you whether you've accomplished, at the end of the year, we have to talk about it.
Well, that's also the purpose of the strategic plan, is to prioritize where we're going to be putting resources. So, Councilmember Bonner.
I have to agree with Councilmember Aldred. I think both Mr. Jennings and our illustrious new attorney have talked about what they want to accomplish, and I know David has said, okay, I'm going through everything with a fine tooth comb, and we're going to see how we can do this better and save money and make sure we're doing the right thing. So having him set goals, or Mr. Jennings set goals, makes far more sense than us coming up with metrics of what we expect them. We expect them to do a terrific job and be coming up with ways to make the city better and the city run better. So whether we can put that into a strict form, I find unlikely. But to find out, what do they want to accomplish and how far did we get that year, I think is just what we do. And it's what we do now, essentially. To an extent. Councilmember Shea.
So as part of, or I was attending that one of that charter things, it's a robust conversation, and both sides made valid points. But that conversation hasn't finished, hasn't stopped since then. It's always brought up to me as well, so let's address it instead of rolling this one down the road. I do agree that, in the sense that any goals or objectives should be set. It's not something that I personally require. But let's make something formalized so that we do address some of those concerns. I do feel a little bit of disconnect with my fellow councilmen because of the sunshine. Having a formal, in writing from both of you, or either of you, of what you want to do, how you want to accomplish it, I think streamlines it, because, we all have separate conversations, and each conversation cannot replicate. So, I would go for that, have something formal in writing that you guys want to do, how you want to do it, what the time frame is, and it unifies us in understanding what we look forward to.
Mr. Jennings, Mr. Margolis.
Mr. Jennings, gesture for me. So, what a gentleman.
but yet the rest of the community is not verbalizing in any way. So I think that that is a part of the process that I use to evaluate myself. In terms of an annual memo with goals, I'm fine with something like that if that's the way you want to move forward. But I will say that meeting with all of you on a weekly basis is incredibly helpful. Like the city attorney said, we do not have votes. We are not elected by the public. Our jobs are to do our best to implement your policy direction, but also on my side of it is to kind of run the operational part of what my job is. So I'm open to kind of more of a memo if that's what you're looking for.
Well, I'm open to more discussion. I still think there are a sequence of events that ought to occur. I can't tell you how strongly I feel about getting the strategic plan done. Because to Mr. Margolis's point, this is a representative democracy. Our clients, our customers are the citizens. We are the conduit between them and the administration. And we still have not completed what our customers want and where they want us to prioritize things. And I think that ought to occur first before we start laying out specific goals and plans. I had hoped that this would already be done by now. It should have been. Unfortunately, we picked the wrong consultant. They were the wrong consultant. I'll leave it at that. But we will eventually get there. And then with that data, we have to act. And I think once we're done with the strategic plan, then I think we can formalize some more of the goals along with doing it in the budget. And then also with your reviews that we'll be doing in October once we've had nearly a year under your belts. All right. Any other new business? Yes.
New business. iPads hacking. As a response. I wanted to ask if we could have a presentation, and maybe it'll be delayed if Gina is having an internal kind of overview of the department, but I don't know about you all, but we get a lot of calls or communications from people who, obviously complain, right? Because most often they don't call and say, this is fantastic. Sometimes they do. But it revolves more about code enforcement. And it was to your point about turf. If we have this, a code and we're not enforcing it, should we have it? So recently, we've all received a number of letters about trees and tree removal at Farmington. This weekend, I got an email about dogs on Sand Key Beach. I had a meeting with a gentleman who lives at Waters Edge, and he's concerned about sound levels with the amphitheater and how our sound ordinances enforced and all that. Short-term rentals on North Beach and noise on North Beach as well as parking enforcements, trash overflowing from commercial dumpsters, all of that stuff. And so I was hoping we could have a presentation from planning and or code enforcement to just publicly talk to us about
that's code enforcement presentation, but it's also a presentation for me. Because people need to understand, you know, we don't have a magic wand on some of these things. And again, there's a process that we have to follow in order to, you know, stay in our legal lane. I mean, I'm fine with it, having a presentation.
I think that, because like even the woman who wrote a long letter about, the dogs on Salmon Beach, it's like if a dog is out there and somebody from a high rise sees it, calls the police, and then the police come out, and it takes maybe 10 minutes or whatever, and where is it, and then the dog's in the house, or, you know, it's like, why would
Smoky
you
Beach
do
is in
this?
Clearwater, first of all, it's county park.
No, I'm talking about the beach on Salmon, our
The
city beach,
residential.
in the residential area. And then the other thing I thought might be interesting, I would like to have a discussion, put it out there in the, you know, in the discussion realm is, when we're talking about those bluff properties and developers and being, some of the developers being very about parking and all that, I'd like to have a presentation about what are the possibilities of using mass transit shuttles, to get people down to Coachman Park for our entertainment venue? So parking at Baycare Field maybe having collection areas in different parts of the city and neighborhoods where we run, a reduced or free trolley. So what are we really looking at? What are the possibilities to getting, you know, mass numbers of people down to Imagine Clearwater that take cars off the road? I know the people on Drew Street are worried about that becoming some thoroughfare. So what do we, you know, what can we look at?